Hey, everybody, it's the Ivy League trucker Clint, and today we have a chat with an old friend of mine who I've known for many years. And Elaine is someone who she's an artist. I've always seen Elaine as somebody who is compassionate, but definitely has opinions. She's just a dear friend that I've known for over 20 years. We haven't had a lot of contact in the last 5, and we just spent some time catching up. So, Elaine, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell the folks a little about yourself.
Hi, Clint. Thanks for your introduction. That was pretty nice. So, yes, I am an artist, and that's what I put on on all those forms. You have to say, what do you do? So I say I'm an artist, but that doesn't mean that that's what I'm doing 8 hours a day. So that's a pretty open term, but it's true. I was a nurse for 17 years, and that's still part of my identity.
Okay.
But being creative is probably my my biggest identifier, I suppose. I have come to see my my artistic endeavors
Okay.
as ways of kind of connecting with people. So the things I do and the things I make, I don't even bother trying to sell. I do them more for connecting, teaching it to people, doing it with people, or just sort of for the fun of it, I guess, the creative process.
Mhm. What type of art do you do? Are you a visual artist? Are you, like, painting, mixed media, what?
So I had the privilege of going to the Academy of Fine Arts after I got married. My dear husband was very supportive. He put me through 4 years plus, because I did some of it part time, at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and I was a painting major.
And that's a
So
very highly regarded school in the art world if folks don't know.
yes. And it was a privilege. It was a privilege. I still pinch myself that I got to go. It was a wonderful experience. I pictured myself being the next Cecilia Bow. I thought I was going to be making all kinds of amazing paintings in that realm of expressive realism and portraiture. And I can do it. I'm not as good as I thought I would be, but I can do it and I like it, but I don't love it. So, what I ended up realizing after I was teaching at a art center, I taught for 13 years at a community art center, and realized that the best thing about all of it is teaching it and seeing people who don't think they can achieve that skill get to the point where they can. And that, I think, is the greatest creation that I've done. That is I feel like I could die happy. So there was so many people, and often it was retired folks who had always wanted to learn to draw and paint that never got a chance, or younger people who are home with kids and, can take a class. So I would have so many people say, I don't know how to draw, but there's something inside. I've always wanted to do this. And they get to the point where they're so proud of what they've done and they've done some great things. So the bringing it out of people there's nothing like it. And the other thing that I've learned through all of this is although I thought I wanted to be great, whatever that means in
Uh-huh.
quotes, I've realized that the best thing about any art form is I call it living room art, where it's sketching. Like I sketch all the time. I sketch at church, I sketch on the beach, I sketch on the train if I'm on I sketch everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And I often will give those things away. I'll take a picture of it. And especially if I'm sketching something of somebody, I've
Right.
given a ton of them away.
Okay.
And I call it living room art. It's not highbrow. It's the equivalent of playing your guitar in the living room. I love it.
That's fascinating. So, what I'm getting is the sense of your artistic expression is both it's very in the warp and woof of your everyday life, and also the other side of watching. new creators create and achieve things that they thought that might not do. That really floats your boat. Yeah, I think.
And how universal it is
Mhm,
that
mhm,
most of us want to be able to create something. I think we all have abilities that we don't tap into.
okay,
So helping somebody tap into those abilities and then have that skill that they then pass on to someone else,
okay.
you know?
So
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it gains kind of a generational life of its own.
it does.
That's cool. Hey, let me back us up a little bit. Tell us a little bit of, just kinda your basic family background, how you grew up, that sort of thing. Did did that and how that connects to where you are today. Elaine and I are both, in a similar age range. We're both north of 55, and
Excellent.
I'll leave it at that. One of the themes of the podcast is generations talking to each other and or missing each other like ships in the night. So,
Mm.
Elaine is very different from me, kind of the analytic, military, business sort of thing, and Elaine is really coming from a different place, which is fascinating. But tell us a little bit about how you grew up and your family.
So I grew up in the house I live in now. I live in a place called Orland, Pennsylvania,
Okay.
and it's a little Cape Cod. My dad was a construction worker. Mom stayed home and had 6 kids and in this little house that it doesn't even feel like it's enough room for my husband and I and our cats. But we did it and it was good. But so I grew up in a household with 5 siblings and not a lot of room to yourself, not a lot of privacy. Dinner table was always an important thing that I very much miss. The conversations, the interaction. My mom my mom was really good, I have to say, at balancing having all those kids and giving us all time and giving us kind of I think, a sense of self. I got a sense of self from her. And she also was big on laughing at yourself. She laughed at herself, and I tend to do that myself. So growing up in a household with a lot of different people kind of keeps you humble because it was never about me. It's never about you when you live in a household that big.
Right.
You kind of have to work as a team. You can't demand, I want the newest style. I want new shoes. I want new blue jeans every year. You get what you get, and most of it's hand-me-downs, and that's
Right.
okay. You learn to deal with that. So that's okay. That's okay. And I think that's a big part of me is I'm not too overly materialistic, although I do like pretty things. And my mom really wanted me to do art, which is kind of funny. In a household with so many kids and no money, my mom wanted me to do art. And then I became a nurse, and my mom would always say, I wish you'd go back to art school. And I'd be like, oh, thank you,
Even when
mom.
you're
I'm
out on
going to
your
do
own
that.
and being a nurse and
Yes, when I
everything.
was single. Yes.
Yeah.
She'd say that all the time. I'm like, mom, you're making me crazy because I'd like to do that too, but I can't do it. I just, it was just funny. But what that said to me was she believed in me. She saw something that needed an expression, that needed an outlet. And when I finally was able to do it and go to art school, I felt like I was giving that gift also to my mom. I think that I think that answers your question because I hadn't thought about it before, to be honest.
Okay.
That that was a big thing for
Yeah.
me.
How
That
about your dad? Were you close to your dad?
Yes, yes, I was, especially later in life. So my dad was a second generation Italian from a big Italian family, and if you don't mind me being generalizing, but it's my family, so I should be able to do that. The stereotype of Italian men is true. There's truth to it. And my dad in on the continuum of that would have been a 7, I think.
Okay.
You know, very manly,
Okay.
very he was a guy's guy, but he had a great sense of humor. He could be silly in his own way. He liked to tease. He was a provider. He could get mad, but it wasn't beyond beyond what it should be.
Okay.
So there was definitely a sense of you don't want to get dad upset.
Right.
And for me, it was more, I don't want to upset dad. I didn't wanna hurt his feelings
Okay.
because there was a very there was a strong sense of what you should and what you shouldn't do. But, it wasn't out of fear, it was out of love.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think there's
Uh-huh.
some similarities between how you grew up and how my wife grew up in a big family. It wasn't Italian, but it was a big boisterous family. And I
Mhm.
I had come from it's just me and my brother, year and a half apart, and my mother's from the South, so she's a steel magnolia,
Oh, boy.
very strong person, but I can count both hands and not use all my fingers the amount of times voices were ever raised in our house, and so we were the cat family. Everybody's not saying anything and pacing around. Of course, Melissa's family was the dog family. Everybody's yelling, but then they make up and love on each other. I think dog families are more healthy, by the way, from where I
That's
sit.
hysterical.
It's at
You
least
listen to this kitty. That's hysterical.
at least you know where you stand in a dog family. I mean, the first time I went to their house, she had an older handicapped brother, and she was on
Mhm.
wrestling with her. She was 19, and their brother was 16, and they're wrestling on the floor, and their mother's squirting them with a little squirty thing from the sink like you do with dogs. "Stop it, stop it!" Followed by a traditional sit-down dinner and the 30-minute dad-led Bible study, and nobody can
Oh
leave the
my god.
table. I was just like, "What is going on here?" But we laugh about that. I just think how families are different is fascinating.
So funny.
So
So funny.
do you still have good relationships with your siblings?
Relationships with siblings definitely take twists and turns.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
we were close when we were younger,
Right.
never expected it to be anything different,
Mhm.
but it is because I think what happens as you get older, and I don't mind saying I'm 64. I feel like I'm 35, but I'm 64. I would say that time time affects all of us in one way or another,
Right.
and
Right.
some of that is because of all the years that you have of experience,
Sure.
and my experiences are different than my siblings. Most of them moved away. Most of them have children. So their experiences, their day-to-day life is different than mine,
Mhm.
and them being the matriarchs of their own families for the most part. I've 4 sisters and a brother.
Okay.
My sisters all have kids. So when you become the matriarchs of your own family, you have less in common
Sure.
with your family of origin. So unfortunately, I don't connect with them as much as I would like.
Mhm.
But I mean, I love them, but I don't feel like I have a close day-to-day relationship with them
Where
anymore. I don't feel like they know me.
where do you fit in the birth order?
I'm the 5th.
Oh, okay. It's fascinating how things go. I was a I'm a hider pleaser. Yeah, and
Mhm.
so my brother was not. He had some conflicts with my father, and I was always like, "What are you doing? Just hide it and go, you
Oh,
know,
that's funny.
do donuts with the car in the snow and don't tell him about it," sort of thing. Um, but I had a great relationship with my father too. He was a kind and gentle man, but my mother
Mhm.
was a steel magnolia from the South, very polite. You don't raise your voice, all. But if you get in an oppositional thing, she won't back down either. Pretty fascinating.
Mhm.
So you and I, one thing on the podcast has been about connecting with folks who are not like us, right?
Uh-huh.
So I think I'm going to give you two dimensions to think about here.
Okay.
One is you're a nurse, a caregiver nurse. People eyeball to eyeball, the good and the
Mhm.
bad of that, dealing with people in healthcare,
Mhm.
nursing, and then of course, then you've talked about the artistic thing is also a human connection thing for you. Are there any groups or types of people you've had a hard time connecting with based on, like, they just seem like they're from Mars, or do you not struggle
Wow.
with that?
I'd like to say no, but that's not true. I think the hardest time for me is when I perceive someone feels as though, and they may be, feels as though or is superior to me.
Okay, can you give me an
Um,
example from your life?
yes, yes. So I live in the Philadelphia area,
Okay,
and
yeah,
there's a lot of, let's say, people who are. blue blood, maybe. Maybe that's one way of looking at it. Blue blood-ish people who let you know that they're highly educated,
Okay.
that they're in a position of authority over you and lord it over you.
Okay.
And my first response when someone communicates that sort of thing, like they're letting me know that they're that,
Okay.
my first response is to be uncomfortable and to be a little miffed and sort of get my back up.
Okay.
And I've learned over the years that people are people, and I don't have to shrink from that. If someone feels the need to let me know that they're superior to me, one is maybe they are, and I need to know it. Okay, thank you. One of it may also be they're insecure and they need to tell me that.
Hmm.
So that used to really, really make me feel uncomfortable and insecure, but I kind of have dealt with it differently by just reminding myself, well, I have some skills and knowledge that that person may not, and they have skills and knowledge that I don't have, and that's okay. But
Right.
I
Right.
don't let it get to me anymore, but it used to really make me uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I think there's a growing immaturity there. We learn, we get to know ourselves better, and we develop, abilities to deal with it. But yeah, like you're saying, everyone is ignorant. It's just a matter of topic, right?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah, that's it.
like, yeah, but I
That's
mean,
it.
I knew nothing about how to get a unloaded 45,000 pound tractor trailer moving on ice,
Mhm,
which I did this morning twice. And both times I had to get the massively heavy chains out and kinda kick them under the wheel so they had something to grab on.
mhm.
Okay, fine. Has nothing to do with a multivariate regression model for a forecast, which I used to do 30 years ago. But
There you go.
I think from an educational standpoint, you're talking a little bit about people who feel the need to assert authority and or higher status for
Mhm,
whatever
mhm.
reason.
Like to intimidate you, whether it's appropriate or not. Like
Mhm.
you are intimidated by the CEO of the hospital,
Sure.
you know, to a certain extent. Some of it's
Mhm.
appropriate, some of it's like not, some of it's not appropriate, but some of it is. So it's like a balance between figuring those things out.
Okay.
But apart from that, the other thing I just wanted to say, because this hit a button, I guess, for me,
Uh-huh.
and not in a bad way. It's more like people that we assume we should feel uncomfortable about is sort of the question. And you know what? I don't feel uncomfortable around people almost at all. And I think the reason I don't is a couple things have made a difference to me. Three things actually, now that I really think about it. One is my dad was so good at talking to people. He was
Mhm.
a little guy, he was 5'2". He was not educated, but he would read the encyclopedias. He read 30 Days
Self-taught.
to Powerful. Yes,
Yeah.
vocabulary every year. He read the dictionary because he didn't like the fact that he wasn't educated.
Right.
So he educated himself
Sure.
and he asked questions of people and he enjoyed people and he would talk to everybody and anybody. And I guess from being around him, I learned to do that. And apparently, from what people tell me, I do it more than other people. And people are like, do you know that person? Why are you talking to them? Like, because I don't know, because it's
So
fun.
yeah, let's drill on that for a second. So I think you and I share that quality,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a theme of the podcast is connecting with people who aren't like us in various situations, in various places, and empathy is a big theme. So when
Mm.
you're doing that, do you just do it
Mhm.
because you just love
Mhm.
it, or are you consciously saying, "I need to do this"?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. So I have to admit, I look for things to connect with people for. And it's almost a compulsion, I guess, because it makes me happy.
Okay.
And also because I do strongly feel that most people want to be noticed.
I would agree.
So,
That's true. Yes.
yes, most people want to be noticed. And a long time ago, I read a book that one of the premises of what the woman was saying was people like to be Well, people like to be noticed,
Mhm.
and most people are glad if you at least smile at them. And if you smile at people, they will smile back. So you've already made a connection.
Right.
You just
Right.
smile in a pleasant way. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, you're somebody that God made. So therefore, you're important. It's not like, oh, you're handsome or I want something from you. It's a you matter. You're a person who matters. So I have that mind in my that thought in my mind.
Mhm.
So when I smile at someone, hopefully that's coming across. And most of the time I think it does, because only rarely do I have egg on my face when I go up to total strangers. And sometimes I'll look for something like if somebody's wearing tweed, let's say, this is an example. I love tweed. I just love tweed. So I may say, "Oh, I love your hat." And we'll talk about that for a second. Or if I notice something's going on between maybe a mom and a little girl, I'll say, "That was adorable. She is so," like I just look for things. I definitely make it a point to connect with people. Like the other day, this is
Yeah, give me an
classic.
example.
Yeah, this is classic me. Totally classic me. I was having dinner with my husband and a friend at the Red Robin, and there was a family of 5 having dinner together. I thought it was kind of funny that the teenagers were all on their phones. So the mom and the dad are there, and they sort of interacted, and they seemed like they were happy to be out together, but they were all on their phones.
Uh-huh.
And the dad was drinking something that looked so delicious. So I noticed it and I asked the waitress what it was. And at Red Robin, you can get unlimited root beer floats. So apparently it was a root beer float,
Mm.
but he had mixed it up. So it didn't look like a root beer float. So I was totally intrigued by this. So my friend ended up getting a root beer float because of it. I got a root beer and I said, I want to go ask that man what it is. And my husband won't let me because it embarrasses him. So on the way out, I was like, I'm going to do it anyway. So I went over to this family and I said, "Excuse me, I just have to ask, what are you drinking? Because it looks so good." So
There you
he told
go.
me, I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well, how come yours looks different than his?" And then he told me he really whipped it up. And so we ended up having like a nice little conversation. The kids were smiling, they were talking to me, they were laughing, and they were interacting more.
Uh-huh.
And it was because I just went over there. And then my husband came over and said, "Is this lady bothering you?"
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah, and
it's
I
just
know
like
I
we had
know I
this.
know Elaine's husband, and I've known him. I mean, again, Elaine and I have kind of not had a lot of contact the last 5 years, and before this call, we caught up. He is a much more self-contained dude,
Mhm,
I will
mhm.
say, with his great strengths and qualities, but I think they're very complementary because she is the more gregarious and outgoing, and he is, I think, I'm a little bit more, "Okay, I'm fine being over here." But they both love people, and I know that he spent many years in our church serving people in a diaconal helps ministry, which shows his heart of caring for people.
Mhm.
But again, he's not I don't necessarily see him being the center of the heat and light in a dinner party or a
No.
broad conversation. You gotta get him one-on-one and kinda pull it out of
Mhm,
him.
mhm.
But let's switch gears a little bit and talk about you and I are both in this generation. We we all grew up with the one phone and it had a long cord and it was in the kitchen, and if it rang and it was not physically picked up, you just didn't exist, you know? I mean,
Right.
to today's generation of very hyper connectivity. So when you look at the younger generation, let's just say, in the last podcast episode, we talked to Robert. He's 27, but very engaged in his pursuits. If you were to talk to the younger generation, what would be in speaking to the younger generation, like what is your do you think they're good at connecting the way you connect, or do you think they're bad at it?
Mm.
That's a broad question, but I mean,
It is a broad question. A few years ago, I would have said we were better at it, but I've come to realize it's different.
how
They
so?
do connect a lot by texting
Hmm.
and that sort of stuff. And although, yeah, it's not the same as face to face and more intentional, let's get together.
Right.
They s it's I think they do connect. I think they connect in ways that I don't get. And, one of the other things about that just dawned on me is I have a fair amount of younger friends who game, and they game with people that are all over the world, and they game with friends that may be in a different city.
Right.
And that is a form of being together and connecting and having some kind of it's an interaction. It's just so different than what I would think. So playing cards at a table, certainly there's nothing like playing cards at a table, but having an ongoing gaming situation with a friend that's gone on for years, and then, you meet people that I don't know that much about it, so I think I'm saying this right, that you maybe met because you're playing this game, or you connect because of the game and it keeps you connected as friends. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like
it
someone you
does.
might
It's
have gone to
it's
high school with and you're still friends 10 years later because of this game.
yeah. Robert talked to that, and he said we're more connected, but much more shallowly connected
That's interesting.
than maybe our generation. When you think of, Gen Z, 29 and below, like
Mhm,
people in their 20s, when you're
mhm.
interacting with those folks, is there anything you notice or have challenge with?
This is gonna sound self-aggrandizing, but I have to admit, I've had a fair amount of friends, because I do have friends in their 20s, that say, "I wanna be more like you," or "I've learned this from you." And
Okay.
that's one of those things about talking to strangers.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
a young girl who I that went to our church. I used to do the youth group at our church, and a young girl named Kathy, who's now in her later 20s, and we've stayed in touch all these years. And she has said that to me many times, and she has intentionally learned to do that. She tries to do it, to talk to people that are strangers and go out of her comfort zone. And that makes me feel good that she sees that as something that's worth aspiring to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think you've been describing
yeah.
an innate curiosity for the other
Mhm,
humans around you, and also taking action against that as a way of being, a way of life, a way of just being with your fellow human, regardless of
mhm.
age or station. I think
Yeah.
that it's interesting because actually didn't really know this about you before we had this conversation because I've always
Mm,
just interacted with you as a friend. We're in the same church, and we're not that we're only a couple years apart in age, that sort of thing. I didn't know that you did that, and I do that too. I do it a lot. I was doing it today. I was
mhm,
talked to 2 people. One was maybe 10 years younger than me. These are both truckers at a shipper window getting papers, and then the other guy was, you know, the the one guy, he was from Maine. He was middle-aged white guy, and then the other one was like a 30-year-old black guy who, to me, clearly was not very educated, but we ended up talking about some trucking stuff and challenges we had, and we were laughing together. And those conversations happened like boom, boom. And again,
mhm.
I could have just stood at the shipper window and not opened my mouth at all. A lot of truckers are truckers because they don't like people. It's a lone
Uh,
job.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I just, in the silence, how you would just say something. I mean, my wife is always like, how did you know all that about that person like 10 minutes later when you just went in and were in the drugstore with them? It's one, you got to want to do it. And two, you got to kind of forget yourself a little bit, to ask them about them and
Mhm.
and and go from there. What would you say what have you learned, from our station in life? What have you learned from these 20 somethings or 30 somethings? Is there something you've learned that you're like, "Oh, wow, didn't know that," or they taught you something?
Well, obviously, their world is different than ours. There's a lot more connection, whether you like it or not. Today, we're more bombarded with information, news, opinions, maybe this, maybe that. There's not as many absolutes.
Okay.
Um, so they can listen to all of this stuff that's going on, especially with how the world's pretty crazy right now.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and it seems like it's our generation that, at least of the people I talk to, that are just like, I'm just beside myself with being amazed at what's going on, and I just wanna yell from the rooftops.
Mhm.
But that doesn't help, and I've had a I've had to deal with a lot of that. Like, why am I getting myself so upset? What could I do that's positive?
Right.
So, on one hand, I think part of that is because growing up, we were used to the, Walter Cronkite kind of news that this is what happened today. And it was the news without as much bias or suggestion. It was the news. And you
Yeah.
felt like you could trust what you heard.
It's significantly different. That I would agree with
Yes.
that sentiment. Like, one thing I've said to people along this is, like, we all used to have one set of facts.
Mhm,
We might have different ideologies, opinions, politics, or whatever about how to deal with those facts,
mhm,
and
mhm,
but we all had one set of facts. There were, CBS, ABC, NBC, and it maybe if you watched PBS, that was it.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
every town had one major newspaper, and a big town might have 2 newspapers. Like, I didn't grow up in Philadelphia, but you grew up with you had the Philadelphia Inquirer, and you had the Bulletin, and
Yes.
that was it for a major city. My hometown, Rochester, New York, one
Mhm,
newspaper, the Democrat and Chronicle, the 3 TV stations. There's a half hour of national and a half hour local, and that was
mhm.
it.
Right,
And
right,
it's this 24/7, even
right.
before we got to the internet, cable, so yeah, it's a very, very different
Right,
world of information and
yeah. So they process it differently. I think they sort of take it in and they mull it about. Their It just seems like their level of angst about it isn't like mine because they know they're taking it in. They're
okay,
figuring it.
okay.
And it's the same with like when I'm using a computer or my phone, which drives me crazy because everything is on the internet now. Everything you do, you have to use the internet.
Yeah. The whole
And
world has moved on to this thing.
yes, drives me crazy because something always goes wrong when you either sign up for something or you're filling out a form or whatever it is. There's always a monkey wrench, and it makes me nuts. And younger people just laugh and they smile at you because to them, yeah, it happens. We'll work it out. We'll figure it out. And it's so they're so used to it that it doesn't get them all upset.
Yeah, it's the soup
So
they
I think that taking things as it comes
okay.
is a better they're better at that. Does that make sense? I
Yeah,
think
it
that
does
makes
make
sense.
sense. I think and again, Robert spoke to that when he said, "Sometimes you just rotate the PDF for the older person and not get into it." They don't know how to do that. As far as older versus younger, is there anything else where you see there's a big divide that concerns you, or you think really at the end of the day it's gonna work out?
As far as age and generation,
Yeah, intergenerationally, I think.
I don't have a problem with as far as intergenerational understanding and point of view.
Mhm.
I don't think I have any issues there. Most of the time, I've actually been encouraged by them. I think the there's a lot of people in the younger generation that are altruistic, at least in my experience, because they don't have the expectation or even the ability right now to see themselves as someone who's going to quote unquote make it big.
Okay.
They are growing up without that. They don't have the ability to think, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna buy a house by the time I'm 30," or "I'm gonna, climb the corporate ladder." It just doesn't seem like that's part of their thinking. Their thinking is it just seems to me much more down to earth.
I think you're
And
right about that. I would agree with that. There was an article in the I listen to all kinds of stuff. I was listening to the Daily, which is the New York Times daily 30-minute thing. I think it was about affordability, and they interviewed, like, 6 people, all in age, like, 25 to 35,
mhm,
40, and 5 of the 6 were like, "Oh, yeah, it's really bad." And then the one person is like, "Hey, I'm in sales, I'm making a lot of money, I love my life." But the general theme was either really struggling financially or the big milestones of home ownership, marriage, children, all that were like they had a sense that they couldn't attain to it when they thought they would,
mhm,
and that was just not my experience. Like, I did buy that my first house when I was in my 20s, and I bought the big house that we raised
Mm,
our family in at age 30. A
wow.
and I look at even, my kids are all doing fine too, but they're like, it's just delayed, economically delayed is a big theme right now. But
Mhm.
so their experience, it's a different thing. It's just a different thing for them than I think where where the average bear was when you and I were 30,
Right,
you know?
right. And their expectations and their goals may be a little bit more down to earth, I guess, is one way of saying it. Not so lofty, like
Yeah,
just having a home, being able to pay your bills, having savings for when you get old. Those are big, those are big goals.
yeah,
But the goals of, having a big house, having money to go to Disneyland 3 times, every year, that kind of stuff.
right.
I think it's just not as much of an expectation today. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it's they're kind of more in touch with what's real and what's important. I don't know. I mean, you can get really philosophical about this.
No, I think you're onto something there, and in speaking with my wife and I are in this kinda big close clan with a lot of cousins and
Mhm,
stuff, so we kinda can look laterally across that, and I think that's a big like, my wife is one of 5, 4
mhm,
living, and so you got, like, 10 cousins who grew up together. Just across that group, of which Robert from last time is one, I see that theme a lot. They don't expect what we expected, and just work-life balance,
yeah.
and Robert talked about that a little bit. I think that, and, I mean, I was just go, 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 always be ascending professionally, economically, financially, it was just that was it, you just do that, and
Mhm,
this generation, I think maybe you're right in the sense, has a more balanced view of things.
mhm.
Okay. Last kinda thing to think about, back to you. What do you wanna be doing in 5 years and in 10 years? Or do you not even think that way anymore?
Oh, no, I do. I do a lot.
Okay.
So, one of my big things in the past 5 years has been to prepare for my 82-year-old self, and
Oh,
I've thought about this a lot.
okay,
So, your 82-year-old self is coming whether you like it or not, and if you don't prepare for her or him, you're gonna be in big trouble, and they're gonna be mad at you. So, you have to prepare that for that person.
okay.
So, for us, that looks like we decided where we wanted to be when we're 82, which means we need to be in a continuing living situation, continuing
Okay.
care.
Right.
So we put money down. We put money down because you have to wait 5 to 10 years before your name comes up. And the place that we're going is called Dock Woods in Lansdale, and it's a tiers. So the first tier is these beautiful houses in a new neighborhood. They're lovely. And then the next tier is cottages, which are a little less big and a little less room, but still
Right.
nice. And then there's apartments. And then if you need it, there's assisted living and then 24-hour care if you need it. And then the campus has all kinds of stuff like
Okay.
restaurants and stuff like that. So we've done that. So I've got like, that's my old lady insurance. So I know that we'll be in a protected place. However, in saying that, what I want to do otherwise is I've been learning to play the violin, the fiddle, and it's taken
Really?
me yeah, so for 10 years, I've been taking fiddle lessons, and it's similar to art. It's basically living room music.
Right.
So I play with a group of people that one I met at camp, at a music camp. She lives in Mount Airy. And we had met some people. We were playing at Pastorius Park in the summer once a week, and we met other people that joined us. So we would play together every week at Pastorius Park, and it's mostly old time kind of music, like the stuff that they play at contra dances, kind of an Irish, Scottish,
Like Irish
Old
jigs, that
English,
sort of thing?
Appalachia, yes, Appalachia kind of stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
stuff from French Canada
Uh-huh.
called Quebecois.
Yeah, yeah. I've driven up there with
So
the
much
Quebecois.
fun. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. So just doing that, and so we get together in the bad weather, we get together in our houses once a week and just sit and play music. So being able to do that now means that it's not going to be so hard when I get older and I'll still be playing. Because some of the people that I've met at camp are in their 80s and, they started in their 60s and they're great. They're really good.
That's
So
really cool.
it's so fun. So that and I'll still be able to do, some of the watercolor stuff and I knit and I do some other kind of fiber art things. And so I always have hobbies. That's probably the big thing is to continue doing that
Mhm.
and also to be in shape, which is not easy.
No, none of us are 17 anymore. But we were discussing that earlier too about you gotta be very intentional if you're a trucker.
Yeah.
What you eat and getting the body moving when you can. It's possible, but it's a challenge. And, me for that is I thought I was gonna retire at the age I am right now, 62, 63, and have the big
Mhm.
pile of money and whatever that means. Well,
Mhm.
that didn't happen. So,
Mhm.
certainly
Mhm.
gonna work till 70, 71, but it's kinda like everything's delayed by at least 10 years. So it's
Mhm.
like, take care of yourself now so that if,
Right.
Lord willing, there's a retirement from the driving in the early 70s, you can actually do stuff, right?
Yeah.
You don't wanna stroke out 2 years later,
Right.
and a lot of truckers, I think, do. They're just out of
Mm.
shape, overweight. I don't see a lot of them living healthily in their 70s, and whenever I see one of them get out of a truck, it's just like major motivation for me. I do not wanna be that.
There you go.
Just to be able to do things with my wife and with my family and with my grandchildren,
Sure.
and that sort of thing. Well, we've covered the waterfront, but I think a big theme I didn't know, Elaine, about you that you were so curious about connecting with people and strangers and just that piece, because
Mhm.
I was not a fly on the wall to see that. We always had a good relationship, and we were in the same
Mhm.
church together, and so we share faith and everything, but I didn't know that. Any parting shots for the audience about connecting with people who are not like us?
Okay. Well, this is something that was a intentional thing. So I told you about this book that I had read and the woman had suggested that you practice this, smiling at people, making eye contact,
Uh-huh,
that kind of thing. So it didn't take much for me to do that. And at the time that I was reading that book, I was working at a place called Northern Home for Children, which had a lot of children from they were children that were taken out of their homes for one reason or another,
uh-huh,
and
uh-huh.
they were in this foster not it was foster, it was a boarding home.
Social services, yeah.
Social services, thank you. So most of them were African American teenagers, and teenagers are, a certain way anyway, and then you have
Yeah,
urban kids that have gone through a lot. They can be quite something.
sure.
So I had been with these boys that I got to know, so they didn't intimidate or scare me, even though they were trying to be scary sometimes.
Uh-huh,
So I have really come to love just making eye contact with a teenager who, especially urban teenagers,
uh-huh,
like they just look scary sometimes because they're trying to.
sure,
And you smile at them and they smile back and they're just kids.
sure.
So I just get the biggest kick out of that. And I think it's important to them also to know that here's this middle-aged white lady from the suburbs looking at me like I matter, and connecting. And I just get the biggest kick out of it. I love it. And another thing along that line is there's a song from John Prine about an old man who's talking about his life and his memories, and I forget exactly what the whole story is, but he's talking about his life. And now he's alone, and he just wants someone to say, "Hello in there, hello." And that's, I think, the name of the song.
Okay.
And that song, the first time I heard it made me cry, but it makes me think that for people. So I'm always thinking all of us want somebody to say hello in there.
Yeah,
So
we do, we do. I love John Prine, John Hyatt, Bonnie Raitt, that
mhm,
whole kind of through line. My wife turned me on to all that, and it's just
mhm,
such they all of them are so human, and so real and of great depth. Yeah, they're so cool. Well,
Mhm.
Elaine,
Give it a
this is
try.
yeah, this has been a hoot. I even though I've known you for many years, I learned some cool new stuff, and hopefully folks can apply a few of those things. So, thank you so much. Next time we need to go out for a coffee.
I would love it. I think Dave would love that too.
All right.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
All right. God bless. Take care.
God bless.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So that's Elaine. What I really appreciate about her is how she's integrated the teaching of art to folks, to connecting with them, and then giving them something that they can use, an artistic talent, and taking them to a place maybe where they didn't think they could do, or doing things they couldn't do. So her heart for people is reflected in how she uses her artistic skills, and she's just really sweet. So she's someone I really appreciate and would like to emulate a little more in how I connect with people. The assignment out of this one is see if you can find a talent or a skill that you have and apply that to making a connection with somebody. Maybe, for example, you're good at sports. You could involve somebody in a sport, or maybe you're good at building things. Maybe you could pull somebody into a building project, something like that, where you use something that, like Elaine does, that you're good at, and then you try to use that to make a connection with another person, either using it to serve them or just doing it together with them, modeling a little bit of what Elaine's doing. If that resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Until next time, it's Clint, the Ivy League trucker.